Sarah, I need you to transfer another $3,000 to my business account by Friday, Michael said without looking up from his phone, his thumb scrolling through something that made him smile, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. My hands froze over the stack of bills I was sorting at our kitchen table, the medical bills from my recent surgery mixed with credit card statements I'd been trying to juggle. 4 days before our 15th wedding anniversary, and here I was, being asked to drain more of my inheritance from Mom while he couldn't even make eye contact. I'm Sarah, 38 years old, a part-time dental hygienist who'd cut back my hours after my endometriosis surgery 3 months ago. Michael had insisted I take time to recover properly, promised he'd handle the finances while I healed. Focus on getting better, babe. I've got us covered, he'd said, kissing my forehead in the hospital. That tenderness felt like a lifetime ago now. Our split-level house in the suburbs had once felt like a sanctuary. Now, sitting across from my husband of 15 years as he texted someone with more attention than he'd given me in weeks, it felt like a prettily decorated prison. The mahogany dining set we'd bought together, the family photos lining the walls, all of it mocked me with memories of when we were actually partners. Michael, that's the 3rd transfer this month, I said carefully, watching his jaw tighten. My inheritance is down to $47,000. We agreed it was for emergencies and our future retirement. He finally looked up, and the irritation in his green eyes made me shrink back, same eyes that used to look at me like I hung the moon. My consulting firm is about to land a huge contract. This is an investment in our future. Don't you trust me? Trust. That word hung between us like a blade. Of course I trusted him. He was my college sweetheart, the man who'd held my hand through my mother's death 2 years ago, who'd promised we'd build an empire together with his business acumen and my steady income. I'd like to see some paperwork, maybe understand where... Jesus, Sarah. He slammed his phone down, making me jump. I'm working 16-hour days to build something for us, and you're questioning me like I'm some kind of criminal? Maybe if you were working full-time instead of playing the invalid, we wouldn't need to touch your precious inheritance. Playing the invalid. The words sliced through me as sharp as the surgeon's scalpel had been. I swallowed hard, nodded, and reached for my checkbook. As I wrote out another check to drain my future, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was financing my own heartbreak, though I had no idea how right I was about to be. The $3,000 transfer was just another drop in an ocean of financial bleeding that had been draining me for the past 2 years, ever since Mom died and left me $350,000. Money she'd saved working double shifts as a nurse, money meant to secure my future, money that was vanishing faster than morning mist. Michael's consulting firm, Phoenix Business Solutions, had become a black hole for my inheritance, and every time I tried to understand where the money went, he had a ready excuse. Client entertainment, software licenses, conference fees, networking events, always something urgent, always something that would pay off huge when the Rodriguez contract comes through, or after the Morrison deal closes, deals that never seemed to materialize but always seemed just within reach. The late nights started subtly, maybe once a week, then 3 times. Then it became unusual when he was home before midnight, and his explanations grew more elaborate. Client dinner ran long. Had to drive to the coast for an emergency meeting. Johnson needed consulting on his merger until 2 a.m. But Johnson's wife Emma had mentioned at last month's book club that her husband had been in Tokyo for 3 weeks, a detail that made my stomach twist when I realized Michael didn't know I knew. His phone became a fortress. Password changed from our anniversary date to something I couldn't guess. Carried everywhere, including the bathroom. Placed face down always. Buzzing with notifications that made him smile. Genuine smiles. Not the tired grimaces I received when I asked about his day. Or suggested we spend Sunday together like we used to. Back when we'd hike trails and plan our future kids' names. Dreams that felt like they belonged to different people entirely. My sister Jessica noticed first during family dinner 3 months ago, pulling me aside while Michael charmed our relatives with stories about his booming business, whispering, "Sarah, when's the last time you saw any actual income from his company?" But I defended him like I always did, explaining about startup curves and initial investments, even as doubt gnawed at my chest like acid. The credit card statements told their own story when I managed to glimpse them. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to, always for amounts suggesting two people, $187 at Chez Laurent, $234 at the Riverfront Bistro, $156 at Bella's Italian, places he'd promised to take me for special occasions that never came, while I ate leftover soup alone, wondering if important clients really required wine pairings and dessert courses at romantic restaurants. My isolation grew like a cancer, spreading through every aspect of our life as Michael suddenly had opinions about my friends. Diana's too nosy. Rachel's marriage failed. Don't let her poison ours. Your book club is just gossip disguised as literature. Until I found myself making excuses to avoid social gatherings, protecting his reputation while he was apparently building a whole separate life with my money. Even Dr. Martinez noticed during my follow-up appointment, gently asking if I had support at home, if stress might be hindering my recovery, her eyes soft with concern, as I lied about my loving husband who was probably, at that very moment, using another chunk of my inheritance for purposes I was too afraid to imagine, too invested in the facade to investigate, still clinging to the man who'd once promised to love, honor, and cherish, words that now felt like the cruelest joke of all. Tuesday morning started like any other, with Michael already gone and a note on the counter. Early meeting with investors, don't wait up tonight, scrawled in his handwriting that had grown increasingly rushed and careless, like everything else about our marriage, but this time he'd made a mistake that would shatter every illusion I desperately clung to. The coffee maker sputtered as I noticed his leather portfolio forgotten on the kitchen chair, the expensive one I'd bought him for Christmas, back when I thought supporting his dreams meant being a good wife. And as I picked it up to put in his office, a bank statement slipped out, fluttering to the floor like a paper confession that would end everything I thought I knew. Wells Fargo business account, Phoenix Business Solutions, and as my eyes scanned the transactions, my knees buckled, forcing me to grab the counter as the room spun, because there it was in black and white. A year's worth of charges that had nothing to do with any consulting firm and everything to do with destroying our marriage. Ashley Madison Premium Membership, $249 monthly for 12 months. Tinder Gold subscription, $29.99, recurring, Match.com. Elite, $44.99 monthly. Hotel charges at the Marriott downtown every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork. $156 per night, always room 412, and my hands shook as I calculated. 2 nights a week, 52 weeks. That's $16,224 just for one hotel, just for 1 year. But the restaurants were worse. Names I recognized from his client dinners. Chez Laurent appearing 43 times, averaging $195 per visit. The Riverfront Bistro 28 times at $220 each. Bella's Italian 36 times at $175. My inheritance funding romantic dinners while I ate microwave meals. And the math was staggering, cruel, irrefutable. $8,385 at one restaurant alone, over $21,000 total on dining that never included me. The florist charges made me vomit into the sink. Rosalie's flowers, $85 bouquets every other week. Roses, tulips, orchids, delivered to Amanda K., delivered to Jennifer S., delivered to Melissa R., names like kicks to my stomach, 26 deliveries that weren't to our address, weren't for my birthday I spent alone, weren't for our anniversary he forgot, $1,210 on flowers for women who weren't dying inside from endometriosis pain while their husband was out playing Romeo on their dime. Victoria's Secret showed up 15 times, charges ranging from $125 to $340. Lingerie I never received, sizes that weren't mine according to the itemized details my shaking fingers found in the portfolio's side pocket. And there were jewelry store charges. Blue Nile, K Jewelers, items described as diamond tennis bracelet, sapphire earrings, gold necklace with heart pendant, $8,250 in jewelry adorning other women, while my wedding ring needed repairs I couldn't afford. The Uber charges painted a map of betrayal. Pickups from our neighborhood to downtown hotels, to apartment complexes in Riverside, to addresses I didn't recognize but that appeared repeatedly. $45 here, $38 there, sometimes $200 in a single night of multiple rides, adding up to $5,130 in transportation for his double life. And every dollar felt like another year of my mother's night shifts, wasted. My phone buzzed. Michael texting, "Don't forget to transfer that 3K today. Super important." And I laughed, a sound so bitter and broken that it scared me, because the final total was staring at me from my trembling calculations. $87,139 in 1 year, spent on affairs, on women, on hotels and dinners and gifts and lies. While I'd been apologizing for buying generic groceries to save money, I photographed every page, every transaction, every receipt with methodical precision. My surgical recovery pain nothing compared to the agony of adding up how much my trust had cost me, how much my mother's legacy had funded my husband's betrayal. And as I heard his car pulling into the driveway, home early for once, probably to ensure he got that transfer, I knew with crystal clarity that my marriage hadn't just ended. It had been murdered. Transaction by transaction. $87,130 worth of evidence that the man walking through our door was a stranger who'd been robbing me blind while I loved him through sickness and health. Till death do us part, suddenly feeling less like a vow and more like a threat. "Hey babe, you okay? You look pale," Michael said as he walked into the kitchen, his concerned expression so perfectly crafted that I wondered how many times he'd practiced it in the mirror before coming home to the wife he was systematically robbing. And I forced my face into something resembling normalcy even as the bank statement burned against my back, where I'd hidden it in my waistband. "Just the surgery pain acting up again," I managed, the lie sliding out easier than expected, maybe because I'd learned from the master himself, and he bought it instantly. Already distracted by his phone buzzing with what I now knew were probably dating app notifications, or texts from Amanda K., or Jennifer S., or whoever was Tuesday's flavor. That night, while he showered, phone suspiciously taken into the bathroom, I created a new email account on my old laptop, sarahsmomlegacy@gmail.com, where I began forwarding every piece of evidence I could access. Our joint account statements showing my inheritance deposits, screenshots of his LinkedIn showing Phoenix Business Solutions had 0 employees, 0 reviews, 0 actual presence beyond a shell website I'd helped him design 2 years ago. The next morning, after he left for his investor meeting, that I now suspected was actually room 412 at the Marriott, I called my sister Jessica from the parking lot of a coffee shop, my voice steady as I said the words that would change everything. "I need the name of that private investigator your friend used during her divorce." And Jessica's sharp intake of breath told me she'd been waiting for this call longer than I'd realized. Marcus Chen came highly recommended, a former FBI financial crimes investigator who specialized in what he delicately called matrimonial asset investigations. And sitting in his downtown office 3 days later, I spread out my photographed evidence like tarot cards predicting my future, watching his expression grow increasingly grim as he tallied numbers that made my $87,330 discovery look like pocket change. "Mrs. Coleman, what you found is just the tip," Marcus said, sliding a contract across his desk, his fee structure clear and worth every penny of the $5,000 retainer I'd carefully withdrawn in small amounts from my remaining inheritance. And he outlined a plan that would document not just the infidelity, but the systematic financial fraud that could be considered criminal embezzlement of marital assets. Over the next 6 weeks, I became an actress worthy of an Oscar, kissing Michael goodbye each morning with lips that wanted to scream accusations, cooking his favorite dinners while Marcus's team tracked his every move, maintaining our routine while learning skills I never thought I'd need, how to clone a phone's data during the 10 minutes he showered, how to install tracking software that piggybacked on his own Find My Phone app, how to document everything without leaving digital footprints he could discover. The evidence Marcus gathered was nauseating in its thoroughness. HD video of Michael entering hotels with 3 different women, credit reports showing secret cards I didn't know existed with another $156,000 in debt, shell companies beyond Phoenix Business Solutions where my inheritance had been laundered through fake consulting contracts, and most damning, a lease agreement for a luxury apartment in Riverside where he'd installed someone named Amber, paying $3,200 monthly from an account funded entirely by my mother's money. My lawyer Catherine Walsh, recommended by Marcus, was a shark in Chanel who'd frozen Michael's assets before he even knew he was being hunted, explaining that Massachusetts law considered inheritance separate property unless commingled. But since he'd coerced me through emotional manipulation during medical vulnerability to fund his affairs, We had grounds for both criminal fraud charges and civil recovery that could destroy him professionally and personally. Keep playing the loving wife for 3 more weeks, Catherine advised, her smile predatory as she showed me the subpoenas ready to serve. Let him dig deeper while we document everything, because men like Michael always get cocky when they think they're winning. And I nodded, thinking of Mom's double shifts, her careful savings, her dreams for my security, all while planning the moment when Michael would learn that the woman he'd dismissed as weak had been building a case that would leave him with nothing but the truth of what he'd become. A con artist who'd made the fatal mistake of underestimating a woman with nothing left to lose and $87,139 worth of reasons to ensure justice would be served. 3 weeks felt like 3 years as I perfected the art of deception Michael had taught me so well, smiling through breakfast while knowing that in 14 hours he'd be at the Marriott with whoever matched with him that Tuesday. And the hardest part wasn't pretending to love him. It was pretending I didn't know about Amber's apartment where my mother's savings paid for another woman's rent. Catherine had been clear about timing. We serve papers simultaneously, his office, the house, and that apartment in Riverside, at exactly 2 p.m. on Thursday, when we know he'll be in room 412. Her strategy as precise as the surgery that had left me vulnerable to his financial abuse, and I marked days off my calendar with the grim satisfaction of a prisoner counting down to freedom. The universe seemed to be clearing a path for justice when Michael announced he'd be attending a crucial business conference in Miami, the exact week we planned to strike, showing me fake registration emails for an event that Marcus had confirmed didn't exist, and I played my role perfectly. That's wonderful, honey. This could be the breakthrough Phoenix Solutions needs, while knowing he'd be with Amber at a resort my inheritance would pay for. My sister Jessica became my secret ally, helping me move important documents to her house. Mom's jewelry, photo albums, anything sentimental that couldn't be replaced, under the guise of decluttering while Michael's away. And she held me when I broke down after finding our wedding album, unable to reconcile the young couple on those pages with the criminal and victim we'd become. Tuesday morning, I drove Michael to the airport for his fake conference, kissed him goodbye with lips that tasted betrayal, watched him walk through security toward what he thought was another week of deception funded by my dwindling inheritance, and then sat in the parking garage for 20 minutes letting myself feel the full weight of what was coming, before driving to Catherine's office to sign the final paperwork that would end everything. Your husband's digital footprint is extensive, Marcus reported during our final meeting, sliding a USB drive across the table that contained what he called a forensic financial assassination. Every transaction traced, every woman identified, every dollar accounted for, including the devastating discovery that he'd been slowly transferring our house into his name only, using my medical incapacity as an excuse for paperwork I'd signed while high on post-surgery painkillers. The Riverside apartment manager proved unexpectedly helpful when approached by Marcus's team, revealing that Mr. Coleman and his wife Amber had been tenants for 18 months, that neighbors complained about their loud parties, and most importantly, that rent was paid via automatic transfer from an account I recognized as one supposedly holding retained earnings for Phoenix Business Solutions, the company that existed only to drain my inheritance into Michael's double life. I spent my last night alone in our house recording a video message on my phone, sitting at the kitchen table where this nightmare had begun, speaking directly to the camera with the calm of someone who'd already survived the worst. Michael, by the time you see this, you'll have been served, your account's frozen, and Amber will know she's been dating a married man who paid her rent with his wife's dead mother's money. I want you to know I documented everything, that Marcus Chen is very thorough, and that Phoenix Business Solutions is about to have its first real audit. Pausing to hold up the bank statement that started it all. $87,139 in 1 year, Michael, and that's just what you were careless enough to leave lying around. Wednesday evening, I had dinner with Dr. Martinez, who'd become more than just my surgeon but a witness to my transformation, and she squeezed my hand across the table saying, "Your mother would be proud, not of what you're having to do, but of the strength you've found to do it." And I realized that somewhere between discovering the betrayal and planning my response, I'd stopped being Michael's victim and become my own hero. Thursday, 2 p.m. arrived with the precision of a Swiss watch, and I sat in Catherine's conference room watching 4 split screens on her laptop, a live stream orchestration of justice that Marcus had arranged with body cameras on the process servers, Because as he'd said, documentation is everything, and sometimes guilty parties claim they were never served. Technology turning my husband's destruction into a reality show I never wanted to star in. Screen 1 showed Phoenix Business Solutions' rented executive suite, where the process server walked past the confused receptionist I'd never known existed. Straight to the empty office Michael claimed housed his team of 12 consultants, finding only dust and a desk with fake awards he'd bought online. The server photographing everything before taping the summons to the door of an empire that never existed. Screen 2 was our house, where another server rang the doorbell I'd heard chime 1,000 times, recording the notice placement after no answer. Our home looking peaceful and ordinary from the outside, even as it sheltered the evidence of extraordinary betrayal, and I felt a strange detachment watching someone else's hands tape legal documents to the door I'd walked through as a bride 15 years ago. Screen 3 made Catherine lean forward with satisfaction. The Riverside apartment where Amber lived on my mother's dime, and we watched her answer the door in a silk robe at 2 p.m. on a Thursday, her confusion turning to horror as the server explained she was named in a civil suit, that the apartment was paid for with embezzled marital assets, and her shriek of, "Michael said he was divorced," rang through the conference room speakers like vindication. But Screen 4 was the masterpiece, the Marriott downtown, where the server had to be escorted by security to room 412 after explaining the legal situation, and through the body camera, we heard Michael's voice, muffled but unmistakable. "I'll be right there." Then silence, then explosive cursing as he apparently read the papers under the door, his panic palpable even through the cheap camera audio, trapped in the very room where he'd conducted his affairs. "Now for phase 2, Catherine said, nodding to her paralegal who hit send on an email blast that would destroy any remaining reputation Michael had built on lies. Copies of the forensic accounting report went to his supposed business partners, his country club, his LinkedIn network, and most devastatingly, to Amber and the other women Marcus had identified, each receiving proof they'd been dating a married man spending his wife's inheritance on them. My phone exploded with calls I didn't answer, watching instead as Michael's name lit up repeatedly, then unknown numbers that were probably him trying from other phones, then Jessica calling to report that Michael's brother had just texted asking if it was true about the embezzlement, which meant our strategic leak to the family gossip network was working exactly as Catherine had predicted. The Riverside apartment camera had been left running, capturing Amber's meltdown as she apparently opened the attached financial documents on her phone, screaming into her cell, "You said she was abusive. You said the divorce was almost final. You said the money was from your tech exits." Each lie another nail in the coffin of Michael's carefully constructed alternate reality. By 3:47 p.m., Michael's Facebook relationship status had changed to "It's complicated," then disappeared entirely. Along with most of his photos, Amber had posted a lengthy Instagram story warning other women about dating married men who lie about everything, and 3 of Michael's dating profiles had been reported and removed after Catherine's team submitted evidence of fraudulent representation. "Check your bank account," Catherine said quietly, and I logged in to see the most beautiful number, $511,000 sitting in my new individual account, the emergency asset freeze and recovery order she'd obtained working faster than expected. Funds transferred back from all of Michael's accounts, including the hidden ones, Amber's apartment security deposit, and liquidated assets from his fake company, more than I'd ever dreamed of recovering. Michael's first coherent communication came via his lawyer at 5:23 p.m., a formal request for mediation that Catherine laughed at before dictating her response. "Mrs. Coleman will see Mr. Coleman in court, where the full extent of his embezzlement, fraud, and financial abuse during her medical vulnerability will be presented to a judge, along with evidence suggesting criminal charges may be appropriate. Legalese for, 'You're screwed and we have receipts.'" That night, I slept in a hotel room paid for with my own credit card, my first purchase free from the weight of funding someone else's deception. And when I woke at 3 a.m., the exact time Michael used to stumble home from his client meetings, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace, knowing that somewhere across town, Michael was learning what it meant to lose everything to someone he'd underestimated. $87,130 in evidence becoming millions in consequences. My mother's legacy protected and multiplied by patience, planning, and the kind of justice that comes from turning someone's weapons against them. 6 months later, I stood in my new oceanfront condo watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of hope I'd forgotten existed. Coffee in hand. Good coffee. From the expensive machine I'd bought without checking my account balance first. Because for the first time in years, I knew exactly what was mine and that it was enough. The divorce had been swift once Michael realized Catherine had him cornered on criminal charges, his lawyer convincing him that accepting my generous terms beat facing embezzlement prosecution. And I'll never forget the defeated look in his eyes as he signed papers giving me everything. The house I sold immediately, the car I traded for something smaller and entirely mine, and most satisfyingly, a restraining order keeping him 500 feet away from my new life. My sister Jessica helped me redecorate, choosing colors Mom would have loved, warm corals and sea glass blues that felt like healing. And on the mantel sits a photo of Mom in her nursing scrubs next to my latest bank statement, showing $523,000 carefully invested in the retirement fund she'd always dreamed I'd have. Her sacrifice finally serving its intended purpose of securing my future. Phoenix Business Solutions died with a whimper on Google, replaced by news articles about the divorce that Catherine had made sure mentioned the embezzlement details. And last I heard through the grapevine, Michael was living with his brother, working at a car dealership, his dating profiles notably absent after Amber's viral TikTok series about dating a married con artist garnered 3 million views and counting. I returned to work full-time, my endometriosis manageable now that I wasn't carrying the weight of a parasitic marriage, and Dr. Martinez smiled when she saw my latest test results. Amazing what leaving toxic situations does for physical healing, she said, and we both knew she meant more than just my surgical recovery. Tuesday afternoons, once his hotel days, I take pottery classes, my hands creating something beautiful from raw clay, thinking how Mom's double shifts gave me not just money, but the strength to reshape my life when it shattered. And sometimes I catch myself smiling at the irony. Michael stole $87,139 chasing hollow connections while I gained something priceless. The knowledge that I could survive betrayal and emerge not bitter, but free. Not broken, but beautifully, powerfully whole.